Well, I'm going to put myself to task here, and I'm going to defend this trade with another Calgary Flames trade retrospect here. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel here, and here we are to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey. I got another Calgary Flames trade retrospect, and remember the time when we traded away Brett Hull? Yeah, that same Brett Hull that scored over 700 goals in his NHL career and got named one of the top 100 players of all time recent there a couple years ago. Yeah, that Brett Hull. We had him first. However, we ultimately traded him away early in his career. But I'm going to defend this trade. Yeah, we lost it, for sure, for obvious reasons, but we were deep in the forwards at that time there, and the only goal for the Calgary Flames at the time when we made this trade actually was 32 years ago at the trade deadline when we traded Brett Hull away, because the only goal that the Calgary Flames had at the time was winning the Stanley Cup here. And I feel that we definitely made this trade to get a couple pieces that eventually helped us to win the Stanley Cup there. So let's take a look back on this trade here and briefly go over the pieces involved in this trade here. That I'm going to try to defend it, that it's not as bad as some played out to be. There's one of my trade retrospect videos there, I've already put it out there, what I think is the worst trade that the Calgary Flames made. Yeah, this trade is still lopsided, but I still say it is not as bad as some say when they look at Calgary Flames trades in their history and best and worst here. I personally think the Doug Gilmour trade, when we traded him away, was the worst trade that we ever made. But this one, as lopsided isn't as bad. So we had two players going in the trade here, as we traded away forwards Brett Hull and forward Steve Bozek, both of those players, in 1988, just after the Olympics here. Both of those forwards were going to the St. Louis Blues. In return, the Calgary Flames got a defenseman and a goalie. And the defenseman that we got was Rob Ramage, and goalie Rick Wamsley there. Some were saying that when we made that trade there, we traded away a couple forwards there, because we definitely were deep in forwards there. Definitely had a lot of offensive talent there, as we'll take a look at the players that were on the 1987-88 Calgary Flames there, which that season the Calgary Flames were the best team in the league, won their first of back-to-back President's trophies. However, were eventually ousted by the Edmonton Oilers in the second round there. You might have seen that famous goal that Wayne Gretzky scored that ripped the top one over Mike Vernon. That was Game 2 in the second round that year, and ultimately we beat the Los Angeles Kings. Ultimately, the Edmonton Oilers went on to win yet their fourth Stanley Cup at that time there, and also was the last time that Wayne Gretzky played with the Edmonton Oilers, because he got traded in that offseason there. But the pieces that we got in return, some say helped us get that Stanley Cup the next season there, because we definitely needed a depth defenseman there, because you already had Gary Suter, Al McInnes, and Brad McCrimmon in his prime there, and also eventually we got Rick Natras and Jamie McCallum there. So definitely Rob Ramage was definitely that depth defenseman that you always look for at trade deadline, even back then. And then we needed a reliable backup goalie in Rick Wamsley there, because Mike Vernon definitely still was showing the load and was also being counted on as the starter there, but he needed someone to shoulder some of the load there, and it was Doug's Dadswell was definitely the backup goalie at the time, and he was so-so. But Rick Wamsley definitely was an upgrade to Doug Dadswell there, and Rick Wamsley played a few good seasons here at the Calgary Flames. Ultimately, he was packaged in that worst trade in Calgary Flames history, in my opinion there. But yeah, that's why I say Brett Hull definitely was the masterpiece, the centerpiece of this trade here. And actually, he was, as much as he accomplished in his career here, he wasn't drafted until 117th overall in 1984 there by the Calgary Flames, and it was in the 5th round at the time there. So it wasn't like he was a top 10, top 5 first overall pick here. And he turned out to be one of the best snipers of all time here. However, he definitely had a reputation early in his career that, like before he got into the NHL there, which is why his stock was a little lower, because some were questioning his work ethic and his personality there. But he was actually passed up in the 1992 and 1993 drafts here, according to Wikipedia there. So he definitely got passed up a couple times here, and eventually we took a chance on him here. And we definitely saw some potential in how great of a goal scorer he was going to be, because he definitely was a huge goal scorer at the Western Collegiate Hockey Association at the Minnesota Duluth there, as he scored 49 goals in the 85-86 season for that college team there. And he was a finalist. Now, he didn't win it, but he was a finalist for the Hobie Baker Award there. Actually, when Brett Hull first broke in the NHL with the Calgary Flames there, he actually made his debut in the NHL there in Game 3 of the 1986 Stanley Cup Finals there, where we ultimately lost to the Montreal Canadiens there. But then that next season there, at that time, the Calgary Flames farm team was the Moncton Golden Flames, and that's where he spent the majority of the 1986-87 season there. And he actually scored 50 goals that season, tying an NHL rookie record. So he was a rookie there. And he had 93 points for third best in the league there. Then eventually he played a few games with the Calgary Flames there, but his first full season with the Calgary Flames was in the 1987-88 season there, where ultimately he eventually got traded to the St. Louis Blues there. And actually at that time, when he was with the Calgary Flames there, he played 52 games for the Flames in 87-88 before he got traded at the trade deadline there. He scored 26 goals and 50 points there, so he definitely had a point a game pace there, but ultimately he got traded to the St. Louis Blues there. And definitely, in this sense, we lost the trade there, but it was definitely worth the price to pay to get pieces to go on to win the Stanley Cup there. Because obviously, why we lost his trade there, well, I mean, in his first full season in St. Louis in 88-89 there, which happened to be the year we won the Stanley Cup there. In 78 games, he had 41 goals for 84 points there. And then the next season, he had 72 goals and 113 points there. 1991, he had 86 goals and 131 points there. Those was his career best numbers there. And then he had a 70 goal season, then he had a 50 goal season, and a 57 goal season there. So he scored 50 plus goals in 5 straight seasons there. I wonder if anyone can do that again there. But then one of the criticisms with him at the time there, when he was with St. Louis, was the fact that, would he have what it takes to lead a team to win a Stanley Cup there? Because he definitely was the face of the NHL there with Wayne Gretzky, and definitely is the face of the St. Louis Blues there, and for obvious reasons. And he played with the St. Louis Blues up until, I believe it was 98-99 there, before he signed 97-98. It was 98-99 there that he did sign a contract with Dallas Stars there. And at the time, he also played with former Flame Joe Nundyk, where ultimately he got his Stanley Cup with the Dallas Stars. And then he also got a Stanley Cup with the Detroit Red Wings there in 2002 there. And ultimately he finished his career after the lockout there, but it probably should have just retired from there, because when he came back in the 05-06 season there, he only played 5 games with the Phoenix Coyotes then, which is the same franchise that, should also mention, he's the son of Bobby Hull, the Golden Jet. Golden Brett was his nickname there. He played in the same franchise there and actually wore Bobby Hull's number of permission of him with that franchise there, but he only played 5 games, got an assist there. But I'm going to say he had 741 goals, which is definitely in the fourth best of all time there. And most recent there, he's been in the news because Alexander Ovechkin joined the 700 goal club, and I made that video debating on do I think Alexander Ovechkin is going to break Wayne Gretzky's goal record here. But the 86 goals definitely was the third most there. Only Wayne Gretzky had more goals in a season there, where he had a 92 goal season there. I don't think those numbers are going to get broken anytime soon there, but that's Brett Hull there, and definitely we saw some potential out of Brett Hull, given his college pedigree and what he done in the farm team there. And he had a point-a-game pace there with the Calgary Flames there before we traded him. But it was definitely a position of strength there. So that's just a quick glance at Brett Hull here. The other forwards that we traded away here, well, it was almost kind of silly. It's like, oh, we're going to give you Brett Hull, St. Louis. We're going to toss in Steve Bozak, too. I mean, he was known as a two-way forward with, with and a strong penalty killer, as it says here in Wikipedia there. Even then, he didn't have too shabby of numbers here. I mean, he did start his career with the Los Angeles Kings before he got traded we went to the Calgary Flames, and then he was packaged with Brett Hull there. At the time there, he was still battling injuries, so he was maybe looked upon as, well, he's just coming off injury there. I don't know how much production you're going to get out of him. Because at the time there, I mean, his best season with the Calgary Flames was the 1985-86 season there. That was the year when the Calgary went to the finals for the first time there. He had 21 goals and 43 points there, but in the year that he got traded to St. Louis in the Brett Hull trade there, he scored 20 in 26 games. He only had 3 goals, 7 assists for 10 points there. So Steve Bozak was definitely, we definitely had an abundance of forwards here. So it was definitely a trading away from position of strength here to solidify other pieces of the franchise there. He actually only played 7 games for the St. Louis Blues after the Brett Hull trade before he went to the Vancouver Canucks there, and we definitely got to see a lot of Steve Bozak there in the playoffs the next season there, where that's who we played, and got a good scare out of them in 1989. Who knows if Mike Vernon definitely didn't stand on his head there in Game 7 there, this trade probably would look even worse. But, or even more lopsided, and probably wouldn't look upon as much when trying to defend it here. So those are the players that we traded away here. And then the players that we got in return here, Rob Ramage, well, actually he was a first overall pick from the Colorado Rockies in 1979 there. He was just a journeyman forward here, or defenseman here, that definitely plugged in the bottom 6 there, because we definitely had Gary Suter, Al McInnes, and then we had Brad McCrimmon as well. May he rest in peace there, because unfortunately he died in that Yaroslav locomotive plane crash that happened back in September 2011 there. But we definitely had a stacked defense there. As well, we had Rick Natras and Jamie McCowan there. However, Rob Ramage provided us with that depth there, and he definitely wasn't here to score goals here, because in the rest of the season there, I mean, for 87-88 there, before he went to the Calgary Flames in that Brett Hull trade that we're trying to defend here, in 6-7 games, he had 8 goals, 34 assists, and 42 points here. So he definitely showed some higher numbers here, but he had less playing time here as a defenseman here, because we had Suter and McInnes there. The rest of that season with the Calgary Flames, in 12 games, he had a goal, 6 assists for 7 points here. And then he played his first and only full season with the Calgary Flames in 88-89 there, when we won the Stanley Cup there. He played 68 games, and he had 3 goals, 13 assists for 16 points there, and then he played in 20 playoff games where he had a goal, 11 assists for 12 points there. Then we got traded away for a second-round pick after we won the Stanley Cup here. Overall, I mean, he played over 1,000 games. He has 1,044 games. He has scored 139 goals, 425 assists for 564 assists there, and he has over 2,000 penalty minutes, and 2,224 penalty minutes there. So he was definitely a hard-nosed defensive defenseman there, who could provide some offense there. Keep in mind there was more offense there, and actually in the 88-89 season there, he had 156 penalty minutes there, so he definitely had some grit here. And actually he actually had a couple of seasons where he had over 200 penalty minutes here, but Rob Ramage definitely brought in some depth on the defense there that we definitely needed, because our goal, remember, at the time of this trade here was winning the Stanley Cup here. And then the last piece, before I go over why I felt this trade definitely, as lopsided as it is, and some say it was definitely not a good trade here, but it was worth paying that price to win the Stanley Cup there, because would Brett Hull have as much opportunity here in Calgary as he did in St. Louis there? So her last piece is Rick Wamsley here, and definitely he was a solid goalie when he started his career with the Montreal Canadiens there, and actually it says here in the 1982 season there, he shared the Williams-Jennings Trophy for the best, goals against average there with Dennis Huron of the Montreal Canadiens there. And he definitely was an established, solid 1A, 1B goalie for the Montreal Canadiens and the St. Louis Blues here. But he definitely came in to replace Doug Dadswell there to provide some, an option for the Calgary Flames behind Mike Byrne there, so he doesn't shoulder too much load there, because that's the other thing we definitely see still in the NHL today, is I think gone are the days where you have a goalie that plays over 70 plus games here. You need two solid goalies so that you don't have one goalie that plays too much and risks getting hurt or injured there. The St. Louis Blues definitely, I think, learned that price the hard way. I believe it was 1996 there, where I think Grant Fuhr played 79 games there. I mean, they were coached by Mike Keenan there, and he definitely has his philosophy about you have one better goalie and you play more games there, but he definitely got played in the ground there and definitely got hurt and relied on John Casey there, and he almost pulled off that upset against the Detroit Red Wings that season there in the second round, but it didn't happen. Still with Brett Hull there at his prime. But getting back to this here, why we need, two solid goalies here, and the Flames today definitely have that going with Cam Talbot and Dave Riddick here. But before Rick Wamsley came to the Calgary Flames here, and St. Louis definitely wasn't as good of a team there. He had 31 games. He had a 13-6-1 record there. He had two shutouts for the 340 goals against average. Keep in mind there was more offense back then. 340 goals against average and 888 save percentage here. Then he only played in 2 games and played 73 minutes here in the last half of the last bit of the 87-88 season there, but in the year that we won the Stanley Cup here, in 35 games there, he had 17-11-4 there. And he had 2 shutouts for 296 goals against average and an 881 save percentage there. And like I say, Rick Wamsley definitely, the following season, 89-90 there, he had a 18-86 record there, and 90-91 there, he was 14-7-5 there, and then he wanted more work there, and ultimately was packaged in what I think is the worst trade in the Flames ever made in the Doug Gilmour trade there. But yes, we did trade away a future. He definitely flourished a lot more in St. Louis there, because he had a line mate in Adam Oates there, the Hull and Oates. Not to be confused with the rock band Hall and Oates. He had Hull and Oates there. There's Brett Hull's Hull. Talking about the musical band is Hall there, but Brett Hull definitely had more opportunity to flourish in St. Louis there, because the last piece of this video here I'm going to take a look at here is the 1987-88 Calgary Flames here, and I think this was a position of strength. That why we made this trade here to win the Stanley Cup here, and the Calgary Flames have said when they won the President's Trophy in 1987-88 there, the first of 2, because they won it the following season in 88-89 there, which is the top team in the league here. This team was on the cusp, and they were definitely a Stanley Cup contender here. And, at that time there, when we were in the same division as the Edmonton Oilers there, and always keep drawing them in the second round there, and more often than not, we were on the wrong end of it, because we had a damn good team, but the Edmonton Oilers were even more up there because they had a lot more Hall of Famers here. But, if you look back on the 87-88 season here, we had guys, Håkan Lube was still in his prime here. Remember Håkan Lube, the guy we got from Sweden? And he definitely led the team in scoring that season. He had 50 goals and 106 points there. Second was, remember Mike Bullard? Not the comedian. There was a Mike Bullard here, and he had a career year that season there, and actually the next season he went to the Pittsburgh Penguins here. He had 48 goals and 103 points, and he was second there. And then we had this guy named Joe Nieuwendyk in his sophomore season there. He had 51 goals and 92 points there. And then we had Gary Suter, who was one of our offensive defensemen there. Definitely was one of our stalwarts there. And actually, Gary Suter, if you don't know, is actually fifth in all-time franchise scoring with the Calgary Flames here. He had 21 goals and 91 points there. And then we had this guy named Joe Mullen. At the time, they're one of the highest scoring American forwards of all time here. As you made a trade a few seasons ago to get Joey Mullen. He had 40 goals and 84 assists there. And then we had Al McInnes. Definitely was also one of the top 100 players of all time here. He had 25 goals and 83 assists there. And then we rented John Tonelli the season before there, where he had 4 Stanley Cups with the New York Islanders there. He had 13 goals and 52 points there. But we definitely had an abundance of offense there. And also you got guys like Gary Roberts was definitely starting to form in here. And then we had that Theron Fleury guy who was also knocking on the door here. So Calgary definitely at the time here had no problems scoring goals. And that's why I felt Brett Hull was expendable here. And I said with all this depth here, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. At the time, I mean, looking at the overall scannings of the player stats, to keep in mind this is all Calgary Flames number here, Brett Hull, he was 10th on the list in scoring there as he played 52 games with the Calgary Flames in the 1987-88 season there. He scored 26 goals, 24 assists for 50 points there, so almost a point a game there. But he was definitely down the depth chart. So I don't think he would have had as much of an opportunity to flourish like he did at St. Louis there because he wasn't the guy. He wasn't the face of the franchise. I mean, there's hindsight is 2020 here. And also the fact that we made that trade there, and then we made that blockbuster trade with the St. Louis Blues that offseason there to get Doug Gilmour. So maybe in some way that kind of paid us back indirectly there. And Doug Gilmour definitely was one of the huge pieces that led us to eventually winning the Stanley Cup in 1989 here. And then also going back to the player stats here. The goaltending that definitely got upgraded here because I'm looking at Mike Burns' numbers back in the 87-88 season there. He played 64 games. He was 39, 16, and 7 there. Pretty good numbers at the time there. He only had a shutout there and a 353 goals against average there. And then in the playoffs there, he was 4-4 with 396 goals against average there. But we were playing against the Edmonton Oilers in the second round there. But the goalie that ultimately Rick Wamsley came in to replace here was Doug Dadswell here. He played 25 games here. He was 8-7-2 there with a 437 goals against average here. And then looking at Doug Dadswell here, actually after he only played with the Calgary Flames here, because after he went to the left, got replaced by Rick Wamsley with the Calgary Flames here, he played in the IHL and played in various below leagues here. So I'm going to say that was all his numbers there. The bulk of his numbers of his career there. So I'm going to say, yes, we lost this trade. It was definitely, in retrospect here, looking back, it's definitely a massive trade that turned out to be beneficial. You could say longer term, it was definitely very, very beneficial for the St. Louis Blues there because it gave him face of the franchise there for almost a decade there. He definitely benefited with Adam Oates, set him up there. And then eventually he also played with other talented guys like Brendan Shanahan, and he got traded for Chris Pronger there. And then eventually he was definitely a catalyst for Wayne Gretzky there, briefly there. And he also played with Craig Janney there too in the St. Louis Blues. But I'm going to say with the depth that the Flames had at forward there, we definitely had not, a lack. We definitely had tons and tons of depth in offense there. We definitely had no problem scoring goals there. However, we definitely needed a backup goalie and an extra depth defenseman there. So in the longer term, I mean, it was definitely a trade that looks lopsided because, Brett Hull, he scored over 700 goals in his NHL career there. But the Flames, I felt this was a price that they had to pay to get a Stanley Cup, and ultimately they got their Stanley Cup in 1989, and you could still argue that the Flames could have potentially won a few more Stanley Cups if things would have played out differently with the players that we still had and held on to for a couple more years there. And then also one of the trade retrospects that I made, or a few of them, were we made them because we had to shed salary here too. So who knows how long Brett Hull would have been here with the Calgary Flames too in economics here. But I'm defending this trade is in terms of we were looking to get pieces to win the Stanley Cup. And ultimately, we won the Stanley Cup. I mean, St. Louis had a player to rally around, but then it always seemed like he had some criticism where he went there that he's a great player, but can you get a team over the hump there? And he definitely eventually got his Stanley Cups later in his career as a supporting player there, as a role player with the Dallas Stars and the Detroit Red Wings there. But what do you think of this Brett Hull trade? We had him. We drafted him. He definitely turned out, he showed the signs of being a great player and a great scorer before we traded him away. But I think we might have been a little surprised at almost to that extent with the St. Louis Blues, and it was definitely a great situation for him there. But was it worth that trade to get that Stanley Cup? And ultimately that's what we do and strive for, is winning the Stanley Cup here. And I feel that we had to pay that price to win the Stanley Cup here. And some teams, even up to today, when you look at teams, they make tough trades, or trades they got to wonder could that set them back here, but it brings in other pieces to help them in other areas, and they ultimately finally get that Stanley Cup. And at the time there was getting a team that was good enough to beat the Edmonton Oilers, because we couldn't get past the Edmonton Oilers, because as stacked as the Calgary Flames teams were in the 1980s there, they were even more stacked there. And if we weren't in the same division and the playoff format was the way it is, we probably would have played the Edmonton Oilers later in the playoffs than we did. So yeah, that's my Calgary Flames trade retrospect, defending the Brett Hull trade. We lost the trade, yes, but I don't think it's the worst trade that we made, and it was worth making that trade in retrospect at the trade deadline then, to bring in pieces that eventually helped Calgary finally get that over the hump and win the Stanley Cup there. So as I say, if you enjoy everything I do on my YouTube channel here, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders here, I mostly do Calgary sports, talking game recaps, stories, or trade retrospects like this, for example, there. I also do personal blogs, attempt to comedy, and I also share experiences, let's say, at a sporting event, or I'm on holidays on the road there. So if that sounds like anything you'd be interested to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also have my other social media links in the description below there to also follow me there. So as I say here, go Flames go, and yeah, we had Brett Hull first, and definitely turned out to be one of the greatest snipers of all time, and scored over 700 goals in the NHL career. However, we wanted that Stanley Cup, and I don't think he would have had as much of an opportunity in Calgary as he had in St. Louis there. And eventually Brett Hull, got his Stanley Cups later in his career. Well deserved to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and has his number 16 retired in St. Louis there. And obviously he's still an ambassador to the St. Louis Blues there, but we had a little piece of his career too. So as I say, I'll see you in the next video there.